This video is brought to you by Law Excellence IAS Academy.
Dear students, good morning. Welcome to Law Excellence Deep. Let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 26th August 2019. The first article for discussion, under the cover of President's Rule. To understand this article, we need to understand how Article 370 was abrogated and Kashmir was divided into two union territories, and then Article 356 of the Constitution. And finally, what are the consequences of abrogation of Article 370 through the misuse of Article 356? These things we have to evaluate over here. Now, Article 356, it is meant to impose President's rule. Whenever the President's rule is imposed in the state, the executive functions of the state are taken up by the union government, and the same are executed through the help of the governor of the state. And legislative functions are taken up by the Parliament of India. So, in the case of Jammu and Kashmir, President's rule was imposed. It means that the functions of the state government now are getting performed by the union. And second, the functions of the legislature are getting performed by the Parliament of India. In this scenario, Article 370 was abrogated in consultation with the state government of Jammu and Kashmir. So there is a legal fiction over here. As Jammu and Kashmir government do not exist, that function and that matter was decided by the governor as the representative of the union. It means governor was consulted by the union government as the state is under the president's rule. And Article 3 was used, and under Article 3, any state, if it has to be divided, the state legislative assembly has to be consulted and its opinion shall be taken. As legislative assembly is not there, the opinion of the parliament has become the opinion of the state legislative assembly. So in this case, Article 356 is used. Under this cover, Article 370 was abrogated, and also the Jammu and Kashmir state was divided into two parts. Let's take, in our federalism, subjects were divided between the center and the states. Now, center wants to take certain subjects which are there in the state list. What is the constitutional procedure for amendment? According to Article 368, it has to be passed by the parliament with special majority, plus half of the state legislative assemblies have to agree that with simple majority. So, in this case, the legislative assemblies, if they are dissolved through the president's rule, Parliament, if it agrees, that is more than sufficient. So, the country can made to function like a unitary government. The powers of the states can be abrogated, taken away, by transferring the subjects in the state list to the concurrent list or union list through use of the Article 356. So, that's why what the author is saying here is certain matters such as division of the states, and then with regard to the transfer of subjects from state list to the other lists. In these cases, consultation with the state legislative assembly shall be made mandatory, and these functions cannot be transferred to the union parliament. So, union parliament under president's rule 2 cannot take up certain functions of the state legislature and state executive. These are related to the changing boundaries of the state or changing the sovereign power of the states. That is the essence of this article. Privacy no longer supreme. So privacy and data connection, we can understand it from two dimensions. Data has an economic value. So today data is the new oil, etc. So open data leads to more innovations. So open data, which has an economic value, can be a growth engine for the country. But what is the cost of the privacy? And second is security dimension. So the government is interested for the mass surveillance. If you see, Aadhaar has to be linked to WhatsApp numbers, social media accounts, etc. This is all but a kind of a mass surveillance. Data can be an instrument for mass surveillance of the state. And data, if we see it from rights dimension, every person has a right on his own life. It means data is an outcome of his decisions on his personal life. So that's where the rights-based approach sees the data from the dimension of the privacy. So We can see the data from the economic dimension where wealth and growth is created, security dimension where the state will be interested in surveillance, and the rights dimension where we ensure the privacy. In this case, Puttaswamy judgment is to ensure the rights dimension of the data, that is privacy. Now, today, in spite of this judgment, the state is more interested in mass surveillance of its citizens, DNA fingerprinting technology, Aadhaar, or to that matter, linking Aadhaar to the social media accounts, face recognition technologies on the streets. Everything are a way towards mass surveillance. So, we have to move from mass surveillance to only targeted surveillance. And this targeted surveillance also shall have judicial, redressal. It means if you are being wrongly brought under surveillance, you shall get a redressal from the judiciary. Judicial oversight has to exist. So that's why, in essence, what the author says is the state shall act as a model data controller. If the state is using data for surveillance, then private sector may misuse this data for some other benefits. So the state shall act as a model data controller. That is what this article talks. On the wrong side, this is about Press Council of India. Press Council of India is a statutory body, and it is supposed to function as a quasi-judicial organization. It means any of the newspaper, if it is crossing the limits and deviating the norms of press, then it can impose certain moral lines to them. So it can give only moral directions. It cannot impose legal conditionalities on the newspapers. But however, Press Council of India also shall protect communications, freedom of speech, so that it can create open society. So the Press Council of India, though is toothless on the newspapers, it shall ensure itself towards the freedom of press and freedom of speech, and its major end is towards creation of open society. In this context, with regard to Kashmir issue, Kashmiri Times, it has published or filed a petition in the Press Council of India. So this petition was adjudged in favor of the government. It means that rather than the freedom of speech, it has stated the security and sovereignty of the country is important. An institution which is supposed to be a watchdog of the freedom of speech and freedom of press, if it has subscribed to the security and sovereignty of the nation, so it means the security dilemma is becoming more and more favorable to the institutions in India. The government, state, and then institutions to protect the freedom of speech. Everyone are listening to the dialogue and rhetoric of the state. That is what this article is. Currency capers. China has devalued its currency. India's currency is also depreciating. Not just India's, it is Turkish lira, Brazilian real, South Africa's rand, Mexican peso, all have depreciated against the dollar. What is the reason? So, one, you know that US China trade war is there, and then China has devalued its currency. China is not a perfect market economy. In a market economy, we use the word depreciation. In a state controlled economy, we use the word devaluation. China has devalued its currency. So, when China devalued its currency, obviously Chinese goods becomes cheaper in the international markets. That is one thing. And the second thing is the Indian economic situation is not very well placed for the appreciation of the rupee. And it is stated that Indian currency is overvalued in the international markets. And third, there are fears of recession which are been coming up now across the world. Especially the bond yield value of US currency got depreciated, or because of this there is a fall in rupee. In this context, why we are not very much worried? The current account deficit of India is not very high. It is only 0.7% of GDP. And our forex reserves are very comfortable. We have them to the tune of $450 billion. In this context, the depreciation of currency will promote Indian exports. Only when we do not have forex reserves to back our currency depreciation, then we have to worry about. But India's situation is not worrisome on the external front. A bottom up approach to conservation. In this case, author has taken the example of Kerala to explain about decentralized planning. So it's also called People's Plan in Kerala. In Kerala, in 1980s, there was panchayat level resource mapping. In every panchayat, what are the resources available? And then after that, there was something called People's Planning Campaign. Based on this planning campaign, there is Panchayat Development Report, resource mapping, and then People Plan was developed. And then after the People Plan, they brought in something called Panchayat Development Report. This happened at the grassroots level. So the decentralized planning at the grassroots level is a typical example in Kerala. Second thing, if you talk about Plachimada, this village panchayat, it has asked the Coca-Cola to say goodbye. Then Coca-Cola approached the High Court. High Court also has supported this panchayat order. So panchayat has dared to send a multinational company out of it. So these things clearly state that the local governments, if they actively involve, can make the difference. In this context, people participation and more powers to the local governments can ensure the ecological conservation in India. That's what the Madhav Gadgil says. So, according to him, he says that there are three factors based on which they have categorized highly ecologically sensitive zones on the Western Ghats. One is the slope and then the elevation or height of that particular area. The second thing important is do we have any natural vegetation over there? The third is any are man made factors. So, based on this, when the slope is steep, elevation is high, rainfall will be high, and the risk for landslides is high. When natural vegetation is more, the plant root holds the soil together, it decreases the risk for landslides. And then going for plantation crops, and then leveling the plateaus, hills, all these leads to something called man-made disasters. So in this context, he suggests that these have to be totally avoided in a ecologically sensitive region like Kerala, and this can be only happened with the participation of local governments and the people, because they are the one who gets worst affected. That's why their involvement brings in difference. Naga flag and law key to peace. When Prime Minister Modi came to power in 2014, the very next year, 2015, it was concluded that a framework agreement was signed with Nagas, and Mr. Ravi was the interlocutor from the side of the government. This framework agreement with Nagas actually happened with one of the factional group that is called NSCN Isaac Mubaya. Now, many of the groups, they all want to be involved towards coming to a final agreement. In this case, NSCN IM states that the constitution and the flag of the Nagas have to be recognized. So, if they are recognized, they can expect or they can see some seriousness from the government. The importance of good data. So, a data shall be able to make one understand macro view and also specificity. But however, today for every program, government program, a dashboard is being developed. Swachh Bharat dashboard, like that, everything a dashboard is developed. In these dashboards, we can get a program and information related to that. But however, if I want to see health, I cannot see the wider characteristics and the particular data, but I can only see various health programs related data. So, in this context, the dashboardification of data is not providing for a holistic view on a particular subject and also microscopic view at the specifics level. That is what is the complaint over here. New law to curb lynching unlikely. You know that recently Rajasthan government has passed a law to fight the lynching. And in this context, it is also expected from the center. But center is unlikely to pass any anti-lynching law. And second part is National Crime Records Bureau also do not maintain any statistics related to lynching in India. Those are the points we need to take. Finally, thank you very much. Have a great day. All the best.